Hi, I'm Chris. I'm a therapist and mental health practitioner at 42nd Street. For the past 5 years, I've worked in a therapeutic community called TC42, which aims to support people who might attract a diagnosis of BPD or EUPD. It's a long-term offer of support really that lasts for up to 3 years, and we meet every week for half a day. And it's very much run as a democracy between the staff members, the group members, and what we would call lived experience practitioners as well. Personally, I think it's an amazing way of supporting people who are distressed or might have experienced trauma or serious life difficulties or issues with relationships. I think maybe all too often we hear of people with this diagnosis, being turned away from services for being too unwell, or we hear of them being coerced or mistreated by services, or not being understood or cared for. Or I think often we hear of people given treatment that's too time limited. I just think there's something though about if we can offer someone a safe and compassionate place where they can be heard and related to by others with similar experience, and by a caring and qualified staff team, then I think people can start to make the change that they want to make in their lives. For the past 5 years in this group, I've learned a lot from working with this group of young people. Personally, I'm never really sure what the word recovery means, but I've seen people come into this group carrying maybe an EUPD or BPD diagnosis, being really quite unwell. And I think I've seen things change when people are given some of those right conditions to change. And those conditions can be a number of things, but I think there's something around providing compassion, understanding, and giving people time as well within those services. And I've seen people's symptoms around things like relationships, what we might label as compulsive behaviour, self-harm, suicidal thoughts, the kind of things that we might associate with a BPD diagnosis. I've seen those things kind of improve over time when that time and space is given. On the flip side to that, I've seen members of the group who we've been supporting feel stuck, or maybe things get worse for them. And what I've seen then is the group sticking with those people, holding them, without rejection. I think for me, the BPD diagnosis is problematic, probably for a number of reasons, but in and of itself, I don't see BPD as a life sentence, or it shouldn't have to be seen as a life sentence. I see people come into the group who are distressed due to having experienced trauma, really difficult life circumstances, or problematic relationships. But maybe when people are given some of the right conditions and given space and time, then things maybe can start to feel a bit better.
Hi, my name is Ella Dix-Nagra. I first started showing signs of borderline personality disorder when I was 11 and officially received the diagnosis when I was 20. For me, having BPD meant I was constantly searching for acceptance and care from others in order to feel like I had a place in the world. Other people might have found me dramatic, overbearing, too sensitive, or too avoidant, which would lead to relationships and friendships often breaking down. When I couldn't get that care from other people, I would use behaviours such as self-harm, drinking heavily, or binge eating, as I thought it would make me feel better. What I didn't know is that it would actually make me feel worse, and I'd often get stuck in this cycle of doing these things and then having to do them even more to make myself feel better with no actual positive end result. Part of BPD is being really impulsive, and I would make bad decisions, or I'd struggle to make adult decisions, which led to me not being able to work for a long time, along with the fact that I had intrusive thoughts every day to hurt myself, or that I would burst into tears at the simplest of things. Becoming a group member at TC42 changed my life. It was such a privilege to sit in a room with 10 other people who also had BPD and listen to their stories and have them challenge you. And even though you've got the support of the other people in the group, you soon realise that they're not there to rescue you, they're there to guide you. And that really helped me change my behaviours, that actually, if I self-harmed, I couldn't turn up and show my arm and everyone would see and rescue me and care for me. Actually, what would happen is we'd have a discussion about it and we'd talk about the feelings behind why I did it. And that way I learned how to break down those emotions and those behaviours I was in the group for almost 2 years, and having the option to decide like when I wanted to leave was such an amazing thing, because prior to that, any therapy I'd had was time limited, set by the therapist or the service. Leaving wasn't easy, and about 2 months after I left, something quite major happened to me, and I did do some of those behaviours, but the difference this time around was that I stopped myself before it got too late, and that was 3 or 4 years ago now, and I haven't looked back since. When I got offered the role years later of service user consultant, I was over the moon, like absolute dream job. There is such power in hearing someone's story who has been through it the other side, and you realise, oh my God, I can live the life that I want to, because nobody tells you that. If you Google BPD or you read a news article about it, you think it's a diagnosis for life. And what I love the most about doing that role was being able to show to people that it's not a diagnosis for life. You can move past this. When I left that role, the staff team there and me had a discussion about me declaring my diagnosis with my new job, and they all pointed out to me that actually I don't fit any of the criteria. Like if I went to a doctor now, they would laugh at me and be like, why are you wasting our time? You don't fit any of the symptoms. So yeah, it felt quite strange to talk about it in the past tense and feel like it's part of my past. It will always be a part of me, and I've talked quite about the dark, gloomy things about BPD, but there are so many funny, positive things. Like when we were in the group, as a staff member and a group member, we laughed a lot. Like you learn to take the mick out of yourself and see the funny elements to it, and there'll always be the memories that I treasure, I think, sitting in a room with 10 other people who are quite unwell and everyone's having a bit of a giggle, which sums up having BPD, that even when things are absolutely awful, you can still hold on to that tiny light at the end of the tunnel, that you just know you want things to get better, and things will get better, and they can.
If someone had diagnosed me over a period of months and not in a 20-minute session with a doctor I'd never met before and I would never meet again, I think things might have been different. Since my BPD diagnosis, I've received a diagnosis of complex PTSD, generalised anxiety disorder, recurring depression and anxious attachment. These diagnoses were given to me after a year of working with an EMDR therapist. I think if most people were given the opportunity for their complexity to be heard and understood, their receivement of diagnosis would be different, and maybe BPD wouldn't exist at all. I think it's important to note that I got such lengthy and in-depth therapy, resulting in this understanding of the complexity of my challenges because of being covered by a family member's insurance. This makes me reflect on the role of socio-economic and class-related factors and how my privilege played into my experience. Probably the biggest thing about BPD that hurt my feelings was the personality word. There was this conflicting narrative of self-care and fostering self-love in my treatment, with the diagnosis rhetoric that somehow my personality, which was surely the most inherent thing about me, was fundamentally wrong or broken. How are people meant to take recovery into their own hands, to own their own agency and responsibility, if they're told that their personality is disordered? I made the biggest steps in my recovery when I decided to let this diagnosis go and instead understand that it was my core personality traits, my drive, my compassion, my commitment to be the best version of me, that were my strengths and were to be celebrated, and they were my ticket forward. Some BPD narratives that I saw online, like the favourite person trope, kind of became self-fulfilling prophecies, and I often felt like I was doomed to be a certain kind of person. In reality, with the correct support that was tailored to me and considerable hard work on my part, I stopped seeing myself as someone with BPD, and rather as someone with certain challenges that affected me in my own unique way. And whilst this wasn't my fault, I learned that it was my responsibility. I think if I had begun recovery with this mindset, and that this mindset had been something held by all of the professionals who work with me, I would have felt less restricted in my ability to recover and live a full life. The BPD criteria are so broad, and because they're all listed under one diagnosis, it can lead people to perceive things about their difficulties which perhaps aren't the case or don't reflect the nuances of their lives and personalities. Instability, perceptual distortions and impulsive behaviour did fit my symptoms, but I didn't and I still don't feel like I had intense or stable relationships. I've always been someone with a wide range of friends, and one of the things I like most about myself is the fact that I have great friends. And I felt like the BPD diagnosis undermined the fact that I believe myself to be a good friend with a range of healthy relationships. I hid my diagnosis from people in case they went online and read about it, and this would change their perceptions of me.